Chronicles of the Grim Reaper, Between Worlds, by Griz Calderon. A heavy mist blanketed the night, shrouding the alley in darkness and an eerie, damp stillness. The only sound was the faint, rhythmic drip of water from a broken pipe. A woman stumbled into the alley, her steps unsteady as if drawn by an unseen force. From the darkness, two glowing red eyes emerged, watching her with predatory intent. Count Dracula stepped forward, his silhouette sharp against the faint moonlight. His movements were fluid, almost hypnotic, as he closed the distance between them. The woman gasped, but before she could scream, his fangs sank into her neck. Warm, crimson life flowed into him, renewing his strength and feeding his endless hunger. He drank deeply, indifferent to her quiet whimper and fading heartbeat. A voice interrupted the macabre feast, chilling and resonant, like a storm rolling over a desolate plain. Enough! Dracula froze, the woman's lifeless body slipping from his grasp. He turned to face the speaker. Standing at the end of the alley was a figure cloaked in shadow, wielding a scythe that seemed to shimmer with otherworldly energy. The Grim Reaper. "You!" Dracula hissed, wiping his lips as though caught in an unspeakable act. The Reaper's eyes, though hidden, burned with a fury that made the air around them heavy. "I have come for her soul, as I have countless others you've stolen from this world." Dracula's lip curled into a sneer. "And what of it? They are but fleeting mortals. Their lives are brief, insignificant. I endure." The Reaper's grip on his scythe tightened. "You endure at a cost. Their cost." He stepped closer, the fog parting like a curtain before him. "Do you even comprehend the weight of what you've done? The lives you've destroyed for your insatiable thirst?" Dracula smirked, but his arrogance faltered under the Reaper's gaze. "They are food, nothing more." The Reaper raised a skeletal hand, pointing at Dracula. "Then let us see what food has cost the world." With a wave of his hand, the alley dissolved into a whirlwind of shadows and light, pulling Dracula into a vortex of memories, not his own, but those of his victims. Dracula found himself in a small, candlelit home. A child lay in bed, her face pale, her tiny chest barely rising. Her mother knelt beside her, tears streaming down her face as she whispered prayers. The father, shoulders hunched, stared at an empty chair by the fire. Dracula recognized the scene. He had taken the father's life months before, leaving the family to fend for themselves. Without his income, they had fallen into poverty, and now the child was dying of an illness they could no longer afford to treat. Pain lanced through Dracula's chest as he felt the mother's anguish, the father's fear in his final moments, and the child's growing emptiness as life slipped away. He staggered back, gasping. The scene shifted to a forest. A wolf lay motionless on the ground, its fur matted with blood. Its mate stood nearby, howling mournfully. Dracula remembered this too. He had killed the wolf in a moment of sport, drinking its blood to stave off hunger when human prey was scarce. The Reaper's voice echoed. "Their bond was as deep as any human's. You shattered it for your amusement." Dracula flinched as he felt the wolf's pain, the sorrow of its mate, and the emptiness that followed. It was overwhelming, unbearable. Now he stood in a bustling city square, watching as a man collapsed in the street. Passers-by ignored him, thinking him drunk. Dracula knew better. He had drained the man just hours earlier, leaving him too weak to live, but not dead enough to warrant immediate attention. The man's soul hovered nearby, confused and terrified, before the Reaper appeared to guide him. The Reaper's face was etched with sorrow, but his voice was stern. Your time was stolen, and with it, the dreams you had yet to fulfill. Dracula sank to his knees as the man's despair flooded through him. It was a storm of broken dreams, unfinished love, and the unbearable realization that he had been robbed of a future. Dracula and the Reaper stood once again in the alley. The woman's body lay at their feet, her soul now glowing faintly in the Reaper's grasp. Dracula trembled, his usual arrogance replaced by a hollow shame. You've made your point, Dracula muttered, his voice unsteady. The Reaper stepped closer, towering over the vampire. Have I? Do you now understand the weight of what you've done? The lives you've stolen? The ripples of pain you've caused? Dracula's fists clenched. I did what I had to do to survive. The Reaper's anger flared. Survive? You have taken what was never yours to claim. You, who were once human, have forgotten the sanctity of life. You are a coward, hiding behind your curse to justify your atrocities. Dracula's crimson eyes burned with defiance, but he said nothing. The Reaper leaned in, his voice dropping to a low, menacing whisper. I am not here for your soul, Count. Not yet. But one day I will come for you, and there will be no escape. No shadows to hide in, no lives to steal. You will face the weight of eternity and answer for every life you have taken. Dracula's form wavered, his pride and shame battling within him. Finally, he stepped back into the shadows. One day, he echoed, his voice hollow. The Reaper watched as Dracula disappeared into the night, leaving only the faint scent of blood and despair. He turned to the woman's soul, now glowing brighter in his grasp. With a solemn nod, he guided her into the beyond, his scythe glinting in the pale moonlight. As he faded into the ether, the Reaper's voice lingered in the air. Life is precious, even to the damned. The end.